Hello, Internet. Kopitiam Council back here again. And as usual, today you are with Haffisz and the last time we did a podcast was a month ago, Adi. Is it correct?
Was it a month ago? I feel like it was 2 months. It felt like a long time. I think it was
Felt
during
like
the
that.
last state election in West Malaysia.
Yeah, especially what's happening in the world right now. So it feels very, very long. So let's jump right to it.
Yeah, okay. So, I think as everyone is concerned, I think everyone is aware of what is happening in the Middle East, more particularly a new episode of events that's happening between the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. Some might call it in the wider context, the Israeli-Arab conflict as well. But I think we're going to try keep it contained to between Israel and Palestine. I think a lot of people are feeling very, very strongly about this issue from both sides. I've seen people, I think mostly Malaysians, has expressed a lot of outrage and a lot of disagreement with what is exactly going on, the atrocities committed by Israel and its government. And I've seen also on the other side a few friends of mine in the West who unsurprisingly, Americans are throwing in their support with Israel. I fundamentally disagree with that stance. Just to put it out there first, that I condemn the actions taken by the Israeli Defense Force, the actions taken by the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the Zionist government that is mostly consists of the Likud party. I think just put it out there.
All right, then I also in the same wavelength with you, Adi. I totally condemn any atrocity committed against both sides, actually, not just for the Palestinian side, but of course there were civilians were killed in this bloody war. So both sides also I'm not arguing, in terms of who's right, who's wrong. I think this is a very complicated issue. There's a lot of parameters need to be set to produce such a debate. Otherwise, it's always like, hey, what happened 100 years ago? What happened 1,000 years ago? What happened 2,000 years ago?
So I don't want to go. He said, she said. It goes back all the way till when, basically.
To that rabbit hole. But I mean, since we are talking about 100 years ago and the existence of nation state, I think it's fair enough if we stretch back and when was the British mandate that happened, and then maybe we can evolve from there. Adi, where you want to start off?
I think we can lay down here the idea of where did this how did this situation arise from. And I think I would like to point out that we can trace back to the Balfour Declaration, which was in 1917 in the aftermath of World War I. So back then, Palestine, before the war, they was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. Then after the Turks lost World War I, it passed over. The Middle East was cut up between the Entente powers, the British, French, and all their allies. So the British got Palestine, but in the aftermath, the Balfour Declaration came out by Lord Balfour to, I think it was the Foreign Secretary of State for the British, and he sent this declaration to Lord Rothschild, who is the leader of the Zionist movement in the UK. So the Balfour Declaration, I think for everyone, just for context, is that it affirms the UK support in the creation of a Jewish state. So I think just to put into context here as well is that this did not happen overnight. This came from significant pressure from Zionist groups in Europe at the time, and then there was a wide persecution of Jewish people in Europe. This is a standard trope that happens throughout all of European history ever since the Jewish diaspora in Europe. They were always persecuted. They were always treated as outcasts, basically, in European community. So in a way, I like to think of the Balfour Declaration as some kind of method for the Western Europeans to kind of like cleanse their guilt, basically, to say that, okay, we know we've treated you so and so, so we should, how about you go back to the place of origin of where your people came. Oh, so they're cut out there, guys, now.
Yeah, I think we got cut off.
Yeah, okay, it doesn't matter. I think I said on that. I'll just pass it over to you. I mean, because I don't want to get too way ahead of myself. Let's just stay within this this period of history first, then I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, so definitely Balfour Declaration was the starting point. If we want to take any point as a status here, but I just want to derail a little bit from this particular Palestine issue, because I see a common theme here: Palestine in Middle East, Kashmir in South Asia, and Hong Kong in China. These are all territories that has a long-lasting implication of colonization in these respective territories. So you can see, then they all have direct involvement of the British Empire. So it's quite, it's quite appalling when you see a younger generation of British people that they, hey, it wasn't us that do it, but you, the government of the day is maintaining such a hegemony that they still, I mean, as recent as 1997 in Hong Kong, and Kashmir still now with whatever Indian government are doing there, and now in Palestine. This is a direct involvement of the British Empire or government for today. So I think there's need for reconciliation in terms of world powers as well, like, because I don't think we can discuss this in silo. Like Israel will not have its strength, especially for the 6-day war, to beat all the other 3 Arab nations without any help from UK or US, for example, and Palestine as well. Like the militant groups, a lot of militant groups, people just say Hamas because Hamas is one of the famous one, but there's a lot of militant groups that get support from Yemen, maybe from Sudan, but they are very smaller group compared to Hamas. So it's not just per se Palestine, even Palestine, like who are you talking about? PLO, the PA, Hamas. The PLO doesn't. The Palestinian ambassador to UK, Hussam Zamlot, says that they don't really recognize what they're doing in Hamas are doing in Gaza, but they also understand that something needs to be done because Gaza is under their control. But nothing can justify the killing of a civilian. So again, you can see like how so many angles and so many things that can be said. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to continue from any point? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about the colonial legacy here, because the colonial powers, they just came, they took, and they cut it up in a way that did not take into consideration the local population at the time. But okay, the Balfour Declaration, that is just a declaration from one official to a community leader, basically. I think this definitely set the tone. But I think what really, how do you say, consolidated this whole situation was in the UN partition plan. So right after World War II in 1948, the UN has decided through a special committee on Palestine that certain parts of the British mandate of Palestine will be divided between the local Arab Palestinians and to be given to a new Jewish state called Israel. So this was an episode here. I think doesn't get a lot of conversation going on. Like, of course, I've seen posts online about how this was where the Nakba started. But before the Nakba, it was the first Arab-Israeli war. So what actually came about? How did that conflict actually start? Was that we have to look at it from as many angles as we can. That the partition plan was to give about 53% of Palestinian land to Israel, this was hotly debated and some even opposed by a lot of the surrounding Arab countries at the time. They disagreed to it, even local Palestinians, because they thought to themselves, why should we have to give up? Why do they get the majority of the land when they are the minority, even when it comes to Jewish people that has lived in the region for quite a while? I believe the Arab Palestinian population was outnumbered them at least 3-1. So why the conversation was, why did a lot of this land get portioned out just for this proposed Israeli Jewish state? But I think we also have to note here is that a lot of the Arab countries at the time was barely participating in the negotiations or even the special committee on the partition here. So I think we have to put some kind of accountability here, is that, of course, that it's an unfair partition, an unfair distribution of land. But if you're not able to voice that in a platform that is meant for this partition, of course, it's just going to be carried out, especially when it's endorsed by a lot of the Western powers and the allies who did win the war, who did have a lot of political currency at the time to enforce this or to promote or endorse this kind of partition plan. So I think we have to also call it as it is, that the Arabs here, there was this one saying, the Arabs never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity here. And I think that was that kind of set the stage. And with that kind of tension unresolved, of course, there's going to be some kind of armed upheaval or reprisal from all parties involved here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we need to put ourselves that this was happening in the early 20th century, and as we know, a lot of countries today are young countries, or some of them even got independence yet. So I think we need to see it from that perspective. I think the similar, again, we are Sabah and Adi, so some people might say that, hey, Malaysia Agreement 19. I'm so sorry to audience that dragging to Malaysia Agreement now. Yeah, I'm just making a comparison here. Malaysian Agreement 1963 is invalid because at the time the representative of Sabah and Sarawak were not voted in the parliament to be sent. These are the people that being handpicked by the British and the Malayas. So I think the same argument could be said against maybe representative from the Arab countries at the time. Even Egypt has, we know Egypt from the Pharaoh. They have a long history of a nation state. But how Egypt in the 1910s or 1920s? They were poor country, barely making anything out of it. And Arab Saudi wasn't even have what they have today. And mostly Dubai wasn't exist. I guess at the time it was just a fish market. So we need to understand this and how again like you say, Western powers at the time, US, Western European powers with condoning all this effort by the British, because they are all part of the same gang. And again, seeing from this perspective, people nowadays, I think, especially the Muslims, need to see it from geopolitics that happened in the past. Now, it's some sort of a transition to, like, as we see Muslims gain more power in terms of the most populous Muslim country in the world is Indonesia, for example, and soon projected to be top 10 GDP in the world. So this kind of transition that we need to see and project in the future, that we are going to be somewhat have more balanced power, if not more power. But until that happens, we need to play by the rules and we need to do what is practical. So a lot of Muslim countries now are doing street riots and whatnot. I think this is a good pressure towards the Western hegemony, but it's not like they don't know about this. There's a concrete reason why Western powers wants Israel to act exactly like this, because Israel is the attack dogs of US, that sort of like a proxy in the Middle East. Without Israel, US have to intervene directly, and that's a nightmare to any administration of the day. So we must understand why Israel got 30% of foreign aid given out every year by United States. And every time there's a vote in United States, just recently, again today, there was U.S. always vote no to it. So I think bigger picture is very important. I see you want to come in.
I think you made a good point. I mean, how the Western narratives seems to be the one that shapes the discussion here. But I want to know, like, when it comes to rationalizing, rationalizing the West's how do you say rationale with, like, why would you support Israel? Of course, it's basically kind of their child, basically, like the creation of the state of Israel is basically a Western byproduct. But I want to look at it here. Is it because also that a lot of the Israeli leadership here are actually of Ashkenazi European stock here? Do you think that plays a factor? Because I've seen a few reports here and there that a lot of the top political leaders were descendants from European Jews, while let's say the Sephardi and the Mizrahi community, which Jewish people that were in North Africa, that stayed in the Middle East after the diaspora, they tend to be seen as not almost second-class citizens, but they are put on a position that is less advantageous when it comes to social equity. Do you think that also plays a part here? Like, do you think the Americans see the state of Israel as more like, how do you say, a Western European state, in the sense that they have to protect when it comes to, like, the idea of Western values, Western principles? So they put it there and made sure that it's a beacon, so forth, like you said, proxy, not just in terms of military capability, but also ideologically as well.
Absolutely, yes, I agree 100% with that, and it's not accidentally. I think it's by design. I think they won't trust any other people to depend themselves on others. Like they must come from one of their own. And as you mentioned, like culturally or economically, even in sports, Israel is under UEFA. Like that's the most subtle, most just very soft power, showing that Israel is different in so many ways, despite that it's literally in the Middle East, referred as one of the Middle East, but hey, it's not. So I think to really answer your question, I think I saw the other day that how people in the Senate, in the U.S. Senate, are directly descendant of Jewish immigrant in America. So these are well, you could say like, hey, there's a lot of Irish or Italian as well, but these are linked very closely together to the people that also in power in Israel. So I want to reiterate, it's not by accident. I think it is by design. It has to be such a way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's not a coincidence
What do you
that
think?
they're in UEFA, but also they're also a contestant for Eurovision. It's a mainly
Exactly.
European talent show, but why is Israel, allowed to compete? And I think they won at one time. But then again,
Yeah.
I'm always under the impression that a lot of people, the European countries, don't really want to win because they don't want to host it. But that's just a derailing from the point. But yeah, I think like you said, it's by design. A lot of things here are designed here when it comes to the economic model, the principles, democratic principles were also modeled after, like, the Western state. But I get but I want to go back here first. Is that okay? Now we have this this offspring, or so to say, of European. They call it a guilty, erasing a guilty conscience, but it's, I think we can call it also as a projection of European neo-colonialism, but with the how do you say, with the theme of having some kind of moral stance here, like thinking that it's a moral thing to do, that we have to give these people their country, give them, after being exiled for so long and being persecuted, especially after the events of the Holocaust. But this comes at, we know that this came at an expense of the Palestinian people, who, we have to be fair, have been living there for hundreds and hundreds of years as well. Then even going back to say that this has for the past 1,000 in a few hundred years, this piece of land here was always Arab dominated, Muslim dominated. So you cannot uproot basically 1,300 years of history just like that, and to put it in a way that just cuts things up without being considerate to the local population here. But this was the biggest disagreement between the locals, between the neighboring Arab countries, and this was what led to the first Arab-Israeli war. And I think to the event that we are all very familiar with, which is the Nakba, where we have from there hundreds of thousands, maybe even 1 million Palestinians were displaced to Arab countries, and to even this day still has its legacy. So yeah, I think we can outline it that the foundations of Israel here was already set in a way that was never considerate to the local population. It was never meant as a way to find some kind of equity or peace within the region. In fact, it just destabilized the region. And the West, they just washed their hands clean of it, saying that okay, this is now your problem. We'll give you some kind of support in different ways, but you're basically on your own, or that they drop this on the Arab countries and say, oh well, this is your issue. We decolonized, we have no colonies, so this is your issue to deal with, which is very, very irresponsible. And had there been more time to discuss, had there been more kind of negotiations which were fair and equitable, but what can you expect from political powers in the middle 20th century, which was very Western centric and Eurocentric. So maybe I'm asking for too much here.
I think I want to pick up on your point and saying that the 1,200 history here. I have an unpopular opinion about what's happening now, and I would say this: whoever is the stronger between the two, whatever opposing allies, the opposing enemy that we have. I mean, in the past it was the Ottoman against the Israel's in the past, or it was in the Crusade during the was the famous Muslims warrior, what's his name again?
Saladin.
I forgot his name. Saladin Ayub. So whatever happened at that time, I think whoever can have the military superiority should rule the land. But I'm going to say this as well. We have to understand that in the last 1,200 years, it was controlled by Muslim powers from like the recent one, Ottoman, and then Seljuk, and then Abbasid Caliphate. So we need to understand also, before this 1,200 years, it was controlled by a different religion in power. It was mainly the Roman, it was mainly some other power as well. So I think it's fair to say that now that Israeli, with the support of the Western power, the support of United States of America, should Muslim community, especially in the Palestine area or Arab countries, should acknowledge the existence of Israel. That's why I'm in support of PLO stance that they agree to. This is the Oslo agreement, right? Quotes, to say that okay, we exist, we acknowledge your existence, but the problem is in Gaza, Hamas doesn't want to do that, and in fact, they want their vision or their motto is destroy Israel. So I think again, 7 October recently was, if we take it in silo, this incident was an attack from Gaza towards Israel territory. It's not coming from West Bank or whatever. So in terms of PLO or people in the Fatah in West Bank, it's nothing to do with them. But Hamas deliberately, and this is why I also think that Muslims should condemn Hamas as a terrorist organization, because what they do is they terrorize Israel, and who gets the collateral damage? The Palestinian people. It's always like that. And Hamas never stopped. And look, Hamas cannot be defeated by military way, because they are all over. They can hide, or in fact, they made a tunnel towards the Rafah crossing or whatever, just being discovered. And who knows how they operate as well with the funding from people, countries like Iran. So there's a lot of at play here. But I always follow, if follow the money or follow the who will at disadvantage at this, who are the most suffering here. These are the people in Gaza, and then how Hamas shielding in public residences and all this. I mean, yes, it's against international law for Israel to do such thing, but we need to understand and be practical about it, because Israel wants this to happen. They are waiting for Hamas to do this, and Hamas just every time walk into their trap. And
True.
Who's paying the most? Again, Palestinian.
True. I think I think a lot of people would be quite charged hearing that. But I think we have to call it as it is. No matter how much we say about human right adherence to international standards of human rights, this land, right? I tell you, I think it hasn't changed for the past 5,000 years, where the principle of might makes right applies here. I remember there was this one video I saw years ago. It's like this animated video called "This Land Is Mine." So it shows like sort of like a timeline of how this land of modern day Israel and Palestine was always fought, and people died, getting conquered. So it illustrated from the land of Canaan all the way to modern times. So it's crossed over like who kept coming in, who kept eliminating who, and who kept taking control of what. So I think people should actually take a look at that. It gives a great perspective of like 5,000 years of history of how this land always was conquered, and how it was administered by those, like you said, have the most military power. But going to the idea of this organization of Hamas, I think we also like you said that they are not like the PLO, they're not like Fatah, they don't follow what Arafat was dreaming of, which was the two-state solution. They want the complete and utter destruction of Israel. But we have to see what Hamas is as well. It's an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they have been engaged with training from all kinds of militant groups all over, such as the Taliban, Al Qaeda and ISIS as well. But I want to highlight this one fact which I find quite disturbing as well. Like I want to go to say here that Hamas is the product of Israeli aggression. And according to some, I think Israel is the master architect behind Hamas. Not like the Hamas is an offshoot of Israel machinations, but this. I'm just going to read this one extract here. So this was during the early 1980s. So this is one brigadier general for the IDF, Yitzhak Segev. So he was a military governor of Gaza, and he told this New York Times reporter that he has helped finance the Palestinian Islamist movement as a counterweight to the secularists and the leftists of Palestine. So this is like the PLO, the Fatah Party, who is led by Arafat. And Arafat was the big name at the time during the 1960s all the way to the early 2000s. And this is another extract. So this one Israeli religious affairs official, Avner Cohen, he worked in Gaza for more than 2 decades. And he, in the 1980s, he wrote on an official report to superiors, warning them not to play divide and rule in the occupied territories by backing Palestinian Islamists against Palestinian secularists. So he wrote, and I quote, "I suggest focusing our efforts on finding a way to break up this monster, which is Hamas, before this reality jumps in our face." He wrote. So in a way, Israel, if this is to be believed, Israel has engineered an environment that allows extremist groups such as Hamas to prop up, and it also helps to their benefit, because nothing surges popular support at home than waving the flag, saying that, okay, we're going to fight an enemy here. So we have, this is to be believed, then the acts of Hamas is also on, the blood that has been committed in Hamas is also on the Israelis' hands as well, if this is to be believed. But then there's also conflicting reports that Hamas is also a product of Iranian machinations as well. But I would be, let's try be open about this. Who stands to benefit from Hamas existing, carrying out the activities that they do? Because every time, if we notice the trend, that any time there has been a, an armed conflict against Israel, so I'm talking about the Six-Day War, Yom Kippur, the Intifada, that every single time, this gives Israel, more of the government officials, more excuse to say that, look, we're under threat here, we're being attacked. So this gives them clearance to occupy even more. So it's to their benefit as well, if this narrative is to be believed. But maybe I'm being a conspiracy theorist here. But before I get ahead of myself, what would you think of this kind of information?
I think this is no conspiracy at all, Adi. I mean, just again, take the most recent event here, the 7th October. In the last 2 years, Adi, how many times Israel government have changed, prime minister? Do you think this is a coincidence? That again,
how Netanyahu still ends up as prime minister?
Exactly, and somehow magically Bibi becomes prime minister again, and then this happened. Do you really think this is what they call like Tom and Jerry? Like without Tom, Jerry cannot exist. So Benjamin Netanyahu is a master of what he does best. So he always use the oldest trick in the book to justify. And now no one even talking about Israeli politics now, whether he has the some sort of like illegal action that they want to take the Supreme Court, that because now Supreme Court is the only institution that's stopping Benjamin Netanyahu from having a lot of power. And now after this, let's say 3 months on, maybe early next year, we might see people maybe rally behind Benjamin Netanyahu, and the Supreme Court was pressured to grant whatever he wishes in the future. I'm not surprised it's that gonna happen. So I don't think this is a conspiracy. And whatever you said, it was true. Whatever happened in the past, it was, let's say for the 6-Day War, it was, again, there was no Hamas then, but it was the Arab countries, and then they were defeated. So looking at, I defeated all my enemies, how should I justify my action? Create my own enemies. I think this is a academically people talk on openly, but again, no one can prove this because it's impossible to prove this. But again, if you connect the dots, like I just mentioned the recent incident, this is no coincidence and definitely not a conspiracy.
Yeah, I think just to add more to that, because you did mention the 6-Day War, and I think a lot of people need to know here that the modern borders that we have, that we can see now between Israel and Palestine, was a result of the Arab countries losing the 6-Day War. Like you said, like now that the foreign invaders have been defeated, what can I do here? But I think I want to try and zoom in a bit on the events that happened during the 6-Day War, which happened in 1967, because this was, a pivotal moment that solidified Israel's position. So they were going around at the time saying that, our position is being, the existence of Israel is being threatened. There's an existential crisis happening here because the Israelis were under the impression that all the Arab countries, which was Egypt, Syria, I think it was Jordan was going to launch an invasion. So just for fun fact, Egypt wasn't called Egypt at the time. It was the United Arab Republic, for those that needed to know. But yeah, so the Israeli leadership at the time was playing this whole narrative that, we have to fight. We have to do this. And this was carried over to, I think, US President Lyndon B. Johnson. He was told that, Israel is facing this existential crisis. We need to fight a defensive war. So they played that, the war was defensive. But I've seen a few interviews by Moshe Dayan, who was the Minister of Defense at the time. He made a very candid interview saying that the whole methodology of Israel was that they would send troops to, let's say, Jordanian, Syrian, Palestinian areas, They would bulldoze it down without any clearance, and then if the locals retaliate, they would have permission to launch a military operation. And this was actually supported by former Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin, saying that this was how it was done, and that there was no such thing as a security threat to Israel, because of course Abdel Nasser of Egypt was saying that, okay, we're going to win this war, but he said we're going to win this war without actually firing bullets. So in a way, a symbolic kind of victory, a victory through the pen rather than the sword. But this was played up in Israeli media, the Israeli narrative, and the Israeli leadership. Even though as people like Rabin was against it, saying that hey, there's no such thing as a threat here. Why are we being so on edge here? And Israel, with saying that they gave every reason then with justification, rationale in their heads to launch an attack, preemptive strike on Egypt, destroying its military capabilities, completely obliterating it. Then, since nobody was able to contest, they could take parts of the West Bank that was controlled by Jordan, the Golan Heights, and made even more inroads into Palestinian land. But it's funny because the Americans was under the impression that, okay, this is a defensive war, but we cannot forget that the USS Liberty, which was an intelligence gathering vessel for the US that was just like docked outside, just like monitoring the events was happening. Israel attacked a US ship, which was clearly with US colors, just to drag the US into war by blaming the Egyptians. And this has been very much proven that this was an Israeli attack on a US vessel here. So, a lot of intrigue, a lot of different nuances and political sides that was happening during the 6-day war. But what I'm trying to say is that this was not, this was provoked by Israeli leadership at the time. And we need to call it as such. And I think for, people like Rabin who went through that, I think that is what also helped him come to terms with the idea of the Oslo Accords later on. I think I said too much, but I'll just pass it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about winning the war with a single bullet. I think I want to raise a point as well that how appalling it is that fake news going rampant as well, like not just on one side, but both sides playing the same game. But so I think this needs to be addressed and needs to be said that fake news is a disease, a cancer. Totally not helping in terms of finding a solution to this problem. And you were you I think you were saying just now that what was it? I never mind. It's just the fake news that going on. It's like even Joe Biden was the White House had to retract they said the eyewitness 40 babies were slaughtered by Hamas. So I think this is even if you can understand the degree of the most powerful president in the world making such a mistake, and what do you think of people on the internet has any chance of against the fake news? So we need to be very careful with this. And I also want to see that Muslim community around the world are need call spade a spade, that who is in charge of the Palestinian land and who are actually calling the shot, other than just blaming Israel. I mean, I understand the emotions, the heat of the moment of just blaming Israel. I also in the same boat, but we need to be rational here. Especially, we are quite far away from the region. We need to be if we cannot be because we don't really have a military strength, but surely we have something that the world can hear us about. So together with ASEAN, we have a lot of Muslim community. Why not Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei make a joint statement saying, hey, more diplomatic should be done, and Hamas, we need to call Hamas as well. As much as we call Israel for their atrocity, Hamas needs to be called up again, and whatever both sides need to be brought up to ICJ. If you're saying that Israel committed a war crime, I'm sure same argument can be applied to Hamas as well. So because it's not just on one hand side, so both need to be brought up to ICJ, and the Muslim community, especially I think from this region, needs to lead the way to show that hey, enough is enough, and whoever committed the war crime needs to be brought forward. Otherwise, the issue is just gonna keep repeating its vicious circle of like, hey, Hamas attack Israel, Israel attack Hamas, and then the most Muslim community just go on the street again, and then we go quiet. We maybe boycott McDonald's for 1 week, and then 2 or 3 years again, same happening. It's keep happening, and this is what Israel and US want. We just forget about it, and then they keep doing again.
Yeah, I think like I know I've seen a lot of arguments saying that we shouldn't talk about Hamas because they're a organic reaction to Israel. But like I said, with all the interviews I cited, that it's a product of Israel machinations here. And I think can we say for certain that Hamas truly represents the interests of the people in Gaza, the Palestinian people in Gaza? Of course, they won the elections. I think it was in 2006. But in the aftermath, they executed a lot of their political rivals in Fatah, the PLO, and I think the PIJ was also, and this is also just as much an extremist group at the time, was also chased out of Gaza. And they haven't had an election since. And there has, Human Rights Watch, a lot of these other human rights advocate groups has also gone on record to say that Hamas has also committed atrocities against its own people. Of course, we have to declare out the good and the bad as well. There's atrocities committed by Hamas, but they also, they keep people supporting them, with this, security concerns, this paranoia that grips the Gazan people, and they provide, social services. They have a social services wing to provide assistance. But I think the PLO also does that, and they don't. They're a bit more on the more secular side here. But I just want to bring up this one poll conducted by the Washington Institute. So I know Washington, I know US, but I think let's just give it some kind of thought here. So basically, a majority of Gazans, 65%, think that it was likely that there would be a large military conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza this year. Sure enough, happened. But a similar percentage of 62% supported Hamas maintaining a ceasefire with Israel, with 50% also agreeing the following proposal, that Hamas should stop calling for Israel's destruction and instead accept a permanent two-state solution based on the 1967 borders. Of course, 67 is where we get the modern, configuration of borders here. But it kind of, if this is to be believed here as well, like I'm going to say, I'm not going to give any source an authority here, but can we really say here that Hamas fully represents the interests of the Palestinian people if they're going to commit something like this? Hamas has never been open to negotiations with Israel when it comes to peace. The PLO and Fatah has been doing it at least on 2 or 3 separate occasions, and this always leads to almost a kind of solution, or at least the road towards a solution. But political concerns always seems to derail all these peace processes here. Hamas has no intention for peace. The only option for peace is the destruction of Israel. And if you want to believe that Hamas is in the right here, so by support of Hamas, right? You're supporting the ideology that Israel needs to be wiped out, which I think is not going to work at all. I don't think it's plausible practically, and I don't think it's going to have any kind of political mileage for a lot of countries across the globe here, because we can say that Palestinians have been living there for hundreds of years. There's been multiple generations living there, but now we are experiencing at least the 3rd and 4th generation of Israeli citizens born in Israel that have lived there as well, in the kibbutz and all these. Of course, these are land taken from Palestinians, but this is going to be, if Hamas has its way, it's going to be a back and forth, like you said. So, yeah, we can. I think we can agree here that Hamas is also part of a problem. They are also working to the benefit of Israel and to the benefit of themselves. So this kind of like puts things at a deadlock. We're never going to have peace processes with these kinds of actors involved here, with Benjamin Netanyahu in charge, with Hamas in charge. It seems that the only course of action is, for me at least, that the Israeli people has to find a way to, I've seen some Israeli young people. They were, protesting the other day about, like you mentioned, the whole Supreme Court issue with Benjamin Netanyahu. So they were protesting on the street saying that, this is a breach of democracy and democratic principles. They want a two-state solution. They want peace. So yeah, I think, domestically as well for Israel, the Israeli people also need to stand up here. They need to stand up against, this whole Zionist right-wing extremist party here. But, the the election polls is only going to happen in 2026. So we're not going to know what's going to happen then. So yeah, but at the same time, Hamas will always, with their ideology, will always present a security concern for the Israeli people. And hence, you're going to need someone that represents the Palestinian people that is also amicable to some kind of peace process here. Of course, the best course of action right now is a ceasefire, so that people can regroup, people can actually find a way to move on from this. But that's all I'll say for now.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what you have said, and on the point of that, again, I lost my train of the just now you were talking about how we need to call. I mean, the world community needs to call out that this is not a war against Israel and Palestine. This is a war of the government of Israel, Zionists, and then the militant group of Hamas that wants this to happen. And we need to call this out and say that Hamas is a Trojan horse in this issue. Because, like we said, we already mentioned earlier, without the existence of Hamas, it will not happen. And the determination of the people, the self-determination of the Palestinian people needs to be respected, because Hamas keeps saying that the reason why they never done an election since 2016 was because of a lot of incident going on that would rejected by the PLO to happen. But again, like it's easy to say that because once you won the election, and then all you have to do is just instigate things like 7 October to prolong the effect of some sort of casualty between both sides. So I think it's very there's a short and long-term solutions here for me. Like I always want to talk about solutions, even though this is a very complex complex issue. I know there's no issue and solution that could satisfy all people, all sides, or all people that are listening to this. But for short term, I think ceasefire needs to be created as soon as possible to make pathway for the peace talk. And secondly, long term issue, I think I will reiterate myself again. Whoever has military strength should rule the land, and let's go back to 1947 border for that. And I think Palestinian should, in terms of PLO, whoever the legit authority of Palestine, should some sort of give some leniency towards Israel, because Israel now in power. It would happen differently if it's Palestine can equally match their military strength, or even the Arab nations can help in some way. Since it's not the situation, it's not the reality, we need to in some sort of surrender, put a white flag, so that in the end the people benefit from this. Even though you might say that Gaza is very small, 2.5 million people are there. But if there is no bomb dropping down from the sky, it's still a livable city. It's a beautiful strip, Gaza Strip can still be a livable city compared to what happened now. Again, this is not an ideal situation. Of course, an ideal situation would be like what happened in 1917, but we passed that beyond whatever any return. So just go back to that 1947. If Israel want, or if Israel demand more, you said 53%, right? Maybe if they want more, just give it to them, but with certain sureties that the international law must be upheld. The all human rights must be protected. No, whatever nonsense that's happening right now should not be repeated in any circumstances. That should be the goal of PLO against the world community also, to demand from Israel. Otherwise, we keep playing this game too emotionally attached to this, and this just, we play right into their playbook. America wants this from us, and Israel will do certain things to instigate such hate towards their community. And who's the victim? It's gonna be the Palestinian again. So, as a Muslim, as someone that share faith with my brothers and sisters in Palestine, especially in Gaza Strip, it's beyond sadness to see the videos that we see in these few days. But we also needs to put our emotion aside, and Islamic leaders, especially from Nusantara or Middle East, needs to draw something like what I said. Otherwise, Adi,
it's never going to end. Yeah, it's never
going
to
end.
Yeah. Okay, just like 2 points for me as well is that I think, let's just put it as it is here. Hamas existing is more of a benefit to Israel than it is to the Palestinian people. That one, I think you and me can agree on, right? So, trying to, decouple Hamas from the Palestinian people is also going to be just as difficult, because they have grown to become reliant. They've grown to be Hamas has grown to be the only source of authority that will stand up for the Palestinians. So there's going to be a huge emotional attachment for the Palestinian people to Hamas, regardless. And with this recent string of this military campaign, this genocide, as you could call it, anytime Hamas does something, it gives Israel more, political capital to launch, its attacks, basically. So it's not gonna, it's like you say, Hamas is a Trojan horse, and they're going to play into that feedback loop that, okay, the Israelis bombed, they're committing genocide. Okay, that feeds into Hamas's narrative, like, oh, this is why we are more important than ever. We need to stand up for the Palestinian people and the rights of the Palestinians. That's why we need to destroy Israel. But it's going to be an endless feedback loop until we see people like the PLO and Fatah. We see people of the same kind of caliber or same kind of ideas as like Yasser Arafat or Yitzhak Rabin, because these two were, Arafat may not have been perfect, but he did participate in the Oslo Accords in the 1990s here, along with Yitzhak Rabin. They were both. This was, like, I would say, the closest that we'll ever get to some kind of peace process here. And what happened to Rabin? He was assassinated by right-wing extremists, and this was how do you say this event here that Israel lost a leader who was open to negotiations, and this was celebrated by people like Benjamin Netanyahu. So it's goes back to what Arafat said, is that he called upon strong and fair leaders of Israel so that we can live in peace and harmony with our neighbors here. So it's from both sides. You need both sides here to be able to come to negotiating table. But like you said, Mike makes right. So what I can see also is that whatever this, let's say Hamas is removed, right, and you insert a new, group that is, more willing to speech. I feel that's also going to be largely controlled or monitored by Israel and the West, and that's going to breed more resentment amongst the two, and then people's going to walk out of the negotiating tables, and we're going to be rehearsing. We're going to be going back to this whole situation all over again until there are actually honest to God leaders that is willing to fight for both of them, but also fair to give the fair distribution of voices between the two, especially to Palestine. Then it's not going to end in a way that we all want it to be, which is peace. So yeah, and like you said, like going back to how it we play by emotions. We already can see that here in Malaysia. Of course, we have I'm supporting Solidarity Week as well. I'm wearing the whole muffler, but I'm sure you saw the videos, right? Like schools, how they celebrate Solidarity Week with like guns and the whole baklava. Is it baklava? Yeah. I think I get mixed balaclava and baklava, the treat. Yeah. Anyway, but you can see that happening, right? That, it's already taking on a very emotional dimension. It's already gone into schools to show that, hey, militancy, violence is okay. We have Malaysians going to fight for taking up arms in groups such as ISIS and Al Qaeda. This is how these militants, how these people come in and infiltrate. They come in, they blend in, they start they first start with a message that seems fair, like, yeah, Palestinians need to be free. Yes, agreed. And then next thing you know, it's a slippery slope from there. So this is like, I think this is why you mentioned like emotions have to be very tempered here. Of course, it's hard to, I agree. It's hard to control your emotions when it comes to something like this. People are dying left, right, and center. People are getting bombed. Children are getting killed. But once the dust settles, right? Once the outrage has tempered down, right? What happens next? Because if we don't think of solutions, we don't think of possibilities, then, I remember back in 2014, there was a huge outrage as well, but nothing happened after that. I remember university, I was still talking about like solutions with friends. Like we came up with like true ideas. I think looking back, it was horrible, but what can you do, stupid student, right? But, nothing happened after that. It was an outrage then, as is outrage now, but I would grant the severity of the outrage this time is much larger. The exposure is much larger this time around. But I don't want this to be another case of the globe is outraged, people take sides, and then done. A year later, like you said, no one talks about it. I think we were talking about this at least 2 years ago on Clubhouse.
Yeah,
here we are again.
I think whenever Israel and Palestine conflict happened, reiterate again, the most nervous company in Malaysia was McDonald's, because every time it happened, the Malaysians always like coming back to McDonald's, saying that it's directly related funding Israel, and then just recently, after so many years, McDonald's Malaysia actually is saying a statement, so producing a statement. So I think it's quite funny that's happening. And again, people say, "Hey, we're gonna boycott eating McDonald's," but hey, next time next thing we know, once they have a promotion, McDonald's is full house again. So I think this is some sort of the what I call a not fruitful actions. I think also you mentioned about kids in schools wearing all those playing with toys, guns, and whatnot. It's not a coincidence, Andy, because our leader, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, in recently in Axiata Arena, was condemning Israel just like the rest of Malaysians on the internet. I mean, I understand that he would write this popularity to to for his political gains, like which sitting prime minister would let it go, right? This is a free points for you. But I think, let's see in the Muslim community, especially in Middle East and Nusantara, let's see which leader would come up and say that, hey, we need to be fair with this, put emotional aside, we need to think of long-term solution. Otherwise, this keep happening and happening again. We need to bring not just Israel, but Hamas as well to the International Court of Justice. It's like a scene in Scooby-Doo, where they unmask the ghost is actually a person behind it, so a ghost. So by bringing Hamas to ICJ, we can know who funding Hamas, who actually helping them in so many ways. Otherwise, the claim of Trojan horse or whatnot cannot be proven. And this is what Israel and US are fearing. The community of, especially Muslim community, they don't really care about the world community. People in India were actually rejoicing on behalf of Israeli. But let's see here from the perspective of Muslim community around the world, 1.2 billion people, to actually, hey, I know this is emotional, but we need to put emotional aside and are the facts. So we need to bring this, do some investigation on all parties involved, and then we go from there. Otherwise, it's keep happening. The US doing this again, Israel doing certain things to incite hatred and whatnot, and then there will be rockets flying from Gaza Strip to the Israeli.
Yeah.
And then it keep happening again. So I think the leaders of Muslim countries has a role to play here, but it unfortunately it might be very, very, very unpopular.
True. I mean, I think we should also put some context, like why, like a lot of people asking why aren't the Arabs doing anything about it? Like, let's put it into context here. Egypt has been having its own group of militant groups in the Sinai, which has close ties, and some actually associated with Hamas. So Egypt is less likely to assist groups such as Hamas. Maybe Fatah or the PLO or the PA might be more open to it. Now Syria has been going through a civil war for the past decade here, and they see that the Syrian civil war is more important than when they lost the Golan Heights in the 6-Day War, and Lebanon is in a similar situation, huge economic crisis, all kinds of poverty happening there, and then we have Jordan. Like the Queen is very outspoken, but when it comes to finding a way to support Palestine, it's a very awkward situation because after the 6-Day War, that Fatah committed Black September, which was the planned assassination of the King of Jordan. So we have to also see like the Arab countries surrounding. They have their own slew of issues which cripples any chance for them to give assistance, and they have a very awkward relationship with Palestine and the authorities from Hamas to PLO. So it's very awkward for them. Like you said, it might not even be popular for them. Like Arafat in some Arab countries is seen as a villain, a very evil person. And for some in Syria, they see him as one of the root causes of the civil war. So Arab countries taking a stance, like they can only make a symbolic stance, but when it comes to actually doing action, it's very difficult when it comes to mobilizing support on the ground. And when it comes to Saudi Arabia, which holds the monopoly on the pilgrimage trade, they are more concerned with regional issues such as Iran. That seems to be more of a concern to them. Of course, they have tried to facilitate a discussion, but it seems that they're not willing to do more than just performative actions, basically things that they can show to people that this is we're doing something. But when it comes to concrete solutions, proposals, all that, I think Libya had a horrible solution, but the son of Muammar Gaddafi said that why not you combine these two, the one state solution basically. So it's called Isratina. So it was. I mean, but people have their own ideas, and I think fair enough to them. But I still think that I was losing some personal point for me, as I was losing a bit of faith in the two-state solution. But somebody reminded me that they had hope, so I think maybe I too should have some kind of hope for a two-state solution. But it has to be with a different set of leaders here. It cannot be the Likud party under Netanyahu, the right-wing party. It cannot be, and I will not. And I think when it comes to Hamas, I think it comes into question whether or not they truly represent the interests of the Palestinian people. They can play that narrative that they do, and I think a lot of people. I don't blame people for thinking that narrative is correct, because it might be correct as well. But they are a group that has no interest for peace. So by default, for me, I cannot condone their actions as well.
Yeah, I just want to extend from your point just to how hypocrites are these neighboring Arab nations around Palestine. I just want to mention maybe 3 or 4 big countries. Other countries, I assume they either don't have the money or they don't have the military strength. Like Qatar, Qatar is very rich, but I don't think they have military strength in terms of that. So they can fund money, but not as much as military strength. So Egypt as well, uh, like you said, they have their own problem, and I don't think they can afford to, to help Gaza in military and financially as well. Another biggest hypocrite in the region is Turkey, because Turkey is boasting about like how they want to bring back the Ottoman glory days, whatnot, but they refuse to directly involve in this conflict, even though they're just like 1,000 kilometers away, because they are a member of NATO. They do not want to lose their membership as NATO, so they say that, hey, our hands are tied. If we cannot help our brothers in Palestine, we can help in terms of sending ships of aid or whatever, a little bit of there, but direct intervention to stop the actual conflict, sorry, no. Same thing with Saudi Arabia. Apart from that, what you said, also that Saudi Arabia is gaining military technology from America. So they don't want to sour the deal with America, because they need these arm deals to kill their fellow Arabs in Yemen and whatnot. So this hypocrisy, big country, these are the countries that actually have the money and have the military strength to intervene, but they do not they choose not to do so because of these respective reasons. And calling out this hypocrisy, I think, is very important to solving the issues. Otherwise, it's like it's like you see one of your mates being bully or punch, but all that you are doing is stand on the side. So that's definitely in whatsoever no rights to do that, should be helped. And why these big countries, especially Saudi Arabia or Turkey, just stand on the side and look, because they want also to protect their own interest. And this is what we should be discussing in other parts of Muslim countries, Indonesia or in Kazakhstan or wherever, that these countries have to play a role, more important roles, rather than just very passive, maybe financially aid to Palestine or whichever. And the Muslim community also needs to see this is a geopolitics issue. It's nothing. It has some degree of religion into it, but I would say in today's world, it's not about that. They would bash Hindu, if Hindu were the majority religion in Palestine as well. So any religion, whatever, they will just bulldoze their way, because this is geopolitics, and this is to achieve what the Israeli vision, the greater Israel. So a land stretching from the Mediterranean to the river of Jordan. So again, the narrative needs to be changed. Is in the Muslim community, needs to start from top to bottom. Otherwise, we just uh,
Yeah, I
no
think
permanent solution.
the religious argument for me is, I think it's moot at this point. It's let's it's the situation is ethnic cleansing and genocide. Okay, it's an ethnic conflict here. That is not a religious conflict. It's between two groups of people who one has oppressed the other, and retaliation ensues basically. So there's more layers to it here. There's a political element to it. There's a geopolitical element to it. There's also an economic element to it as well. Like this, this war here comes at great benefit to arms contractors. Most of it situated in America, so it definitely benefits them. So, I'm saying is that I don't. Maybe the whole religious conversation, don't mind having it private. I don't want to say it here. But this, I'm just going to say it here. No, let's say Hamas achieves its objectives, right? The eradication of Israel as a state. There are millions of Jewish people all over the world, and they would still believe in the idea of a Jewish state in Israel. They've been doing this, like the Zionist movement did not come out of nowhere. It was something that has been fermented for at least 2,000 years since the Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans. And if for some people would like to know is that a lot of Jewish traditions during weddings, they would always have a lamentation for Jerusalem. So they always remember, this is how they maintain that continuity of always remembering their old homeland. They were exiled, and then people say that that land, they give up that land, but by choice. But now we have to be fair as well. Israel is doing the same thing to the Palestinians. What was experienced by them during the pogroms and the Holocaust, they are doing the same kind of thing. And I don't think it's a coincidence that those that are in charge, like I said, are more of Europe, descended from the Europeans that experienced the Holocaust. It's no coincidence that they are familiar with the same tactics that was employed on them by let's say the Nazis basically. It's not. I don't think it's. They learned this from somewhere. So yeah, that's something that will take a long time to de-radicalize. Basically, it's going to take a long time to de-radicalize the extreme elements of Zionism, but at the same time, the same can be said to de-radicalize the Palestinians as well, that has been subjected to all kinds of horrors and will definitely experience all kinds of traumas few generations down the line.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to end this discussion by a quote from our great leader, Vladimir Putin. He said recently, I'm just talking with the great leader. Our great leader. Well, he said the Palestinian and Israel conflict is a result of United States foreign policy, period. So I think how you want to interpret that, how you want to unfold that statement, but we also mentioned this U.S. involvement. I think it's up for the audience to think and then do their own due diligence to what's actually at play behind closed doors. So Adi, any last words for this? We just talked about Israel and Palestine in this episode.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's a huge topic and very wide topic. So I think it's normal that would take up most of the time. But for people who would like to know, it's that the Mariv newspaper, so this is a Hebrew-speaking newspaper from Israel, so take it as a grain of salt. They conducted a poll where Israelis agreed that 49% of Israelis says that a large-scale ground offensive shouldn't happen. 22% are undecided, and 29% of Israelis agree for it. You can take that as you wish.
The undecided, probably the family members of Hamas or
the
hostage.
Yeah, the hostages. Yeah. But either way, I mean, it also comes with news that, in the opinion of, like I said, usually when it comes to conflict, Netanyahu or the Likud party would receive a surge of popularity to win the Knesset next time. But this time around, popularity has actually dropped for Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party, which is why he's scrambling to get Yesh Atid and some other central or leftist parties to join the emergency cabinet. So it's just to shore up more political support. So maybe we could start seeing a more concrete downfall for the Likud party and Benjamin Netanyahu, and hope that more level heads in Israeli leadership can take on positions that could make a difference. I hope, what I can do now, hope is that, of course, now Palestine is completely crippled. They cannot do much other than just share awareness of what is going on. But I do hope that the Israeli people would start to see that this really is a genocide. No matter how much you call it self-defense, this is the same kind of rhetoric that was used by parties that coordinated the Holocaust. So it's looking yourself in the mirror. So I think for us here, what we can do is that we, like, boycott may have some kind of impact here and there, but we also need to hold pressure, not the Israeli government, but the Israeli people, that this is wrong, that there should be some kind of solution for peace, which may be the two-state solution. But how that two-state solution will come about is anyone's guess, because the general narrative is that the two-state solution will come with the borders returning to 67 after the Six-Day War, which most might find unacceptable. Well, like you said, 47 during the partition, that one Israelis may not be so keen on that as well, not so keen. So a lot of negotiating has to happen. A lot of fair equity between both when it comes to the negotiating table needs to happen. And I think we all have to do our best to facilitate that kind of negotiation by having these kind of discussions, negotiating what is the solution that is the best interest of the people of both Palestine and Israel as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so that's 1 hour and 15 minutes about Israel and Palestine alone. So I think there's a lot being unfolded, and a lot also things that are not left untouched. I think that's up to next episode, Adi, maybe you talk about whatever that's happening in the
if we can make it to next episode. I don't think a lot of people would agree with what we said, may not be so open to what we said, but we try to keep an open mind about this, so we hope that you too will keep an open mind with this as well.
Yeah, I think those who are listening to this podcast definitely not listeners of Keluar Sekejap, so you have a different mindset, so this is where you belong. I think that's it for this episode, and goodbye from now. I'm Haffisz once again, and
thank you so much, Adi, and thank you for listening.
All right.